So welcome to day 2 of reviewing prerequisite skills for our unit on polynomial functions. The sheet that you've just printed off has a chart on it that asks you to fill in 4 pieces of information for different linear and quadratic functions. So I'm going to do the first 2 examples and then you're going to attempt to fill in the rest of the chart. The first function you see is y equals 2x plus 1. This is obviously a linear function. So if we're looking at our headings, and you remember from day 1, the domain and range of any linear function is always very simple. X can be any real number, and y can be any real number. Those ones are simple. The degree of your function is the highest exponent or the biggest exponent that you see in the equation. So if something's linear, we say it's degree 1, and that's because there's a little power of 1 beside that x. The leading coefficient, that is the number in front of the variable of the highest degree, or in this case, it's the slope. It's the number in front of x. So it's 2. And if we need to provide a very rough sketch, we know that the y-intercept is 1. That's the b value. So you're going to put that there. We see that the slope is positive. So this line is going to go up towards the right. We can also very quickly get the x-intercept by simply plugging in 0 for y. And I can do that in red just to show you. 0 equals 2x plus 1. Solve for x and we realize x is equal to negative a half. That's the x-intercept. So I'm going to put that on the graph right there. And you have enough information to provide a rough sketch. So this line's going to look like that. The next one is quadratic. Negative x squared plus x plus 6. So what do we do with this? I'm actually going to go to a new slide to show you the algebra involved here. That is a review from grade 11. So here's our function. Negative x squared plus x plus 6. The first thing you need to do is look at your leading coefficient here. I'm going to underline it in red. That number in front of x squared is in fact negative, so we need to factor it out. So I'm going to write a negative 1, open up a bracket. That's going to change my leading coefficient to be a positive 1, negative x, and minus 6. The signs change since I'm factoring out a negative. Now, this is a simple trinomial that can be factored using two numbers that multiply to negative 6 and add to negative 1. So we need to multiply to 6, I should say, sorry, negative 6, and add to negative 1. So in factored form, this is going to be x minus 3 and x plus 2. So now we know our zeros are positive 3 and negative 2. Okay, well, why are we doing all of this? If we go back to the chart, we see that we need to state a domain and range. Well, the domain is easy. For any quadratic, we know the domain is going to be any real number of x. The range, however, is going to be restricted to wherever the vertex is of this parabola, and we don't know where the vertex is because this is standard form. I can't tell much from standard form. So that's why on this slide I'm rewriting this in factored form. I've gotten my zeros, and now what I can do is take the midpoint of those two zeros, simply add those two numbers together, and divide it by 2. And if we do that, we get a half. Now you're going to take a half and you're going to plug it back into the original function. So we have y equals -1. We have 1 over 2 minus 3, and 1 over 2 plus 2. We solve this and we realize that y is equal to 6.25. So our vertex is actually going to be 1/2 6.25. Now that's important because now we can go back here and we can provide a rough sketch of what this parabola is going to look like. First of all, plot your vertex. So we have 1/2 and 6.25. It's going to be somewhere up there. Now look at your leading coefficient. I didn't write it down yet. The leading coefficient is whatever number is in front. I'll draw a little arrow. Number in front of the x squared. That leading coefficient is -1. Now what does that tell me? This parabola is going to open down. So again, knowing our zeros of 3 and -2, we can add a little bit more to our rough sketch here. That's going to be 3. This is going to be -2. And we know the parabola opens down. So finally we have a degree. Well, what's the degree of a quadratic? That's going to be the highest exponent that you see. So it's degree 2. And that's sufficient for filling out the table. Go and try the rest of the functions that are listed on the chart. There should be 8 of them. Some of them require you to factor. Do your best, make sure your leading coefficient after you factor is positive, and that's going to help you find those two numbers that multiply to the third number and add to the middle number. Check your solutions when you're done.